for the Tahuna Society, because I'm sure you guys have maybe read about it a little bit at least, and know that they're going in a very different direction this year, right? It's like it's a bartender competition, but you haven't got to make drinks for it. Yeah. And so there's a lot of people that are probably really fucking confused. So we were like, we're going to chat a lot about our background and our history and what we created, and then kind of get into how you could take what we've done and hopefully be inspired and then launch something of your own that is powerful and more wonderful and all the rest of it. No.
Is it because it's not?
Yeah, I'll do that. No, you go. Yeah.
Right, so just a little background. Some of us have heard us, some of you guys have heard us speak before, but a little bit background on who we are and what we've done. We've spent the last 10 months on the road. We now have a home in Toronto, thank God. But we've spent those 10 months going from city to city doing pop-up, talking with bartenders in each place about our recipes, and started at the Trash Tiki essentially as an open source forum and website where people can go on, check recipes, see our articles, and because we don't have a bar, we weren't in competition with anyone. So you're not worried about these recipes being in any one bar or one place that you might be in competition with. So we're going to talk about that tour and how we all started in the beginning.
Because before we had a pop-up, we both worked in a bar that some of you might have been to before called Dandelion in London. And so much of what we do is actually born of the frustrations that we had while working there. Well, that is like, we love them and their family and everything like that, but we really, rewind 3.5 years now, sustainability was about to become the next big thing everyone was talking about, right? But it had this aura around it that you could only do it if you were in really fancy bars, like this one, which is obviously not shy of a penny, right? You could only do it if you worked in these very high-end cocktail bars, and we thought that was bullshit. Is that everybody can do their bit, everybody can be involved in this, and we realized that working in a bar like Dandelion didn't give us the freedom that we needed to really get out there and create the change that we wanted to.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when you're working in one of these more corporate environments, so you have to go through 7 layers of management to prove something works. And if you don't have any kind of precedent to do it, it makes the process become that much more difficult. So we wanted to start making these recipes and kind of proving that they worked on our own, and then we could bring them into the hotel itself.
Yeah, and so we created Trash Tiki purely to be an online platform. We were never going to do pop-ups, we were never going to travel, we were going to stay in London, and all it was going to be was an online resource for bartenders around the world to get inspired by these recipes and start doing them in their own bars. Obviously we fucked that up, and I've spent the last 18 months almost now traveling constantly and all the rest of it, but the original plan was just to go, hey, copy our shit, steal it, and do it. But we realized that people wanted a little bit more, people were still a little bit lost on it all, so we had to get out there and travel a bit more.
And so we started pulling together all the pieces of inspiration for us personally at that time. And one of these things that's been a really huge, changed the way we both eat, changed the way we think about food on a plate, and because of that, changed the way we thought about drinks. I don't know if it's been translated, but The Third Plate is one of the best books on food and farming that we have ever come across. And you're not going to find any recipes in there, which is awesome. It's all about how we've essentially, through monocultural farming, we've fucked our resources that the planet has given us, and kind of how to rethink the way that we eat and the way that we pull food. Because not only are chefs influencers to how we eat, we as bartenders are influenced to how people drink. So we'd have just as much pull and just as much influence on the entire world through the drinks that we make in our bar on a nightly basis.
Yeah, we kind of made this mandatory reading to a degree. And whenever, when everyone's like, oh, where should I start? What should I do? Go to our website, trashtikisucks.com. And there's loads of recipes on there, and we write more articles now as well that aren't even recipe based. But something like The Third Plate, you're right, it kind of helped us start to understand that, navigating this landscape of what the current issues around food waste were, they require more than a bunch of recipes. It requires an understanding of why it's fucked in the first place, right? You kind of got to dive a little deeper and go, what have these farming practices forced us to be consuming and everything like that. It ties in really well as well. It's like wanting to understand the dangers that tequila production is facing in 2018, where having only one breed of agave plant constantly used, that's created its own monoculture, which has its own like fragile dangers to it and everything like that. There'd definitely be a couple of really great ideas that you could create community projects around with it all.
Yeah, there's a big thing that Altos does that they don't talk about it as much, but I'm not too sure why. But it's really, really cool. So they leave a percentage of their agaves to go past the point of when it would be ideally harvested. And the idea with that is to bring back the bat populations that have been decreasing over the recent years, and also allow for the monoculture and the rhizomes to produce naturally instead of through cloning.
Yeah,
It was just a fun job.
Yeah, definitely. So we're at this point of creating it all. Actually, very important to note is right at the beginning of this creating Trash Tiki is when you won the global final for Tahona Society.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that was kind of that. Yeah, that was what, October 2016, September 2016.
2016.
2016. Yeah. And then there was this guy as well. This gentleman's name is Douglas McMaster. He has a restaurant in Brighton, just south of London, called Silo. He also is in partnership with the Lion Company at a restaurant in London called Cub as well. And he also has the best Instagram handle out there, which is McMaster Chef. But Douglas is... Oh, they really kind awesome dramatic effect. Douglas is, as far as we're aware, the only truly zero waste chef in the world. Like, he has a restaurant that produces zero waste. Nothing goes to landfill. Even the compost that he produces in his restaurant, he then sells it back to the people that grow the produce that he then cooks in the restaurant. It's phenomenal, and he's just the nicest guy in the world. And I guess we put Dan Barber and Doug McMaster up there to kind of be like, this is your baseline inspiration. These guys have millions of articles written about them. They have a Netflix show in Dan's case. Doug's about to release his first book, which will be an honest blueprint for anybody around the world that wants to run their own zero waste restaurant. These guys are really that baseline of like what you need to know about and everything like that.
So this bar we spent a lot of time at when we were in London, and all it is it's an Irish whiskey bar, and it has good beer. But the point of us putting a picture of this bar up was that we spent a lot of time with other people discussing this idea, and that's something that you should do. You know, you have this kind of like small idea forming, and even though it might just be like, oh, we want to start a website, or we want to, you know, we want to start talking about this a little bit more. It's really that kind of seed that by talking about it and maybe having a little whiskey or a lot of whiskey, depending on the night, is where we started forming these ideas. And then these ideas got planted, and then we talked and bounced the idea off of somebody else, and we were talking about, you know, how we learned. And for me, I don't learn through reading books. I don't find it interactive enough. Having something that's on a website that can kind of move and form and get changed as the idea changes and sort of ideas flow. It was much more of an easier way to learn, and that's where we kind of came up with the idea of coming on a tour. It's because we needed to make the recipes, because I needed something tangible. I needed to make them, and I also needed something to taste, which is I think the way that a lot of different people learn.
Yeah, and a very important aspect of this as well as you're going into Tahona Society is this is really different, because you're not going to be able to stand there on shift and kind of workshop your idea for your community activation, right? You're actually going to need to take some time beyond the hours that you work behind your bar already to really sit down and chat through whatever idea you're going to come up with and figure it out, because it's not a cocktail. So it's not about banging a couple of different liqueurs in a glass and seeing what tastes good at the end of it all. It's going to require planning, and I mean, if you're going to do something as boring as that, at least make sure you do it with a beer and a drink in hand. And so we got into it, and we started cheap. And this is something very important, that like having a shitload of money is not going to guarantee you a great idea. It's not going to guarantee you any kind of impact or anything like that. I mean, we were still working full time in the Lion Company in London, which is just eye-wateringly fucking expensive to begin with. Yeah, I mean, we pulled this together. We used Squarespace to build the website, which is what, 20 quid a month or a year?
20 Canadian dollars. That's cheaper than so it's like 10, 15 euros a month to get a Squarespace site going. It's quite frustrating at first, but if you're like a little bit tech savvy, you can figure it out, and it's very easy to get a good looking website up. Not that our first one was at all.
No, first website was
the second one was much better and easier to read. But we ended up doing, you'd formulate these ideas on your days off and then spend those hours from 4 to 6 or 4 to 5 in the morning actually executing the recipes so that you're outside of work hours, or doing it in the few hours in the lead up to a shift.
Yeah, I mean, we had so little money, we had to get a friend of ours who was a photographer, and we paid him in a ticket to Paris 6 months in advance, because we were really hoping in the next 6 months we might have made enough money. So we're like, in 6 months we'll bring you to Paris on this trip if you come take photos for us now. Went and bought an 8 quid can of fucking spray paint and just spray painted the bin out back of White Lion that said Tiki inside, and then sat on top of it and took pictures. Because that's literally all the money and time we had to do with it all, right? Then you put that on the front of the website, and that's now become one of the most used pictures that we've ever done that cost us.
Yeah, and this is not to say that we were always loved in the industry either. Some of these ideas, I think I made a menu out of blending up napkins and like dehydrating them on. It was a big old waste of time, but it was an experiment, and I put it on Instagram, and so we got a guy that came into the bar, wiped his forehead with the napkin, and said, "Make something with that." So, it's not without its struggles, and if you do get, the naysayers and the people that are hating on what you do, you just kind of continue on, and they're just helping spread the message as well, because they're still talking about it at the end of the day.
It's very important to understand that ramen noodles do not make a good garnish, and we have no idea why we did this photo, okay? This is also another one that's being used on repeat, and still can't really understand why. But that's the idea. In the early days, you're just going to have bad ideas. And you've honestly just got to throw shit against the wall and wait to see what sticks. Something's going to land. Something is going to finally click, and you're going to go, okay, this works. Yeah.
Yeah, and find those things, those same websites that are talking about the same things that you're talking about, because that's how you're going to find out what inspires you and what works, and sometimes what doesn't. Green Matters is an excellent website and an excellent Instagram to follow, because their messaging is super clear and it's really easy to understand, and it's something that we've kind of turned towards to be like, this is how we should change our messaging a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you should follow them anyway, because pretty much every day they're showing you something cool that happens somewhere in the world. So it might be, there's a guy in Mexico now that's actually taking avocado pits and grinding them into a flour and then rolling them into paper, and he's making straws out of avocado pits, right? Or, I don't know, there was a building in China that was figuring out a way to actually absorb the pollution and make the proximity of that building cleaner than anywhere else within China, because they do have a few issues with pollution there.
They were taking the carbon and actually crushing it into a stone.
Yeah, that was it. And it's this constant stream of just really fucking interesting shit, which makes them fun to follow anyway. But also the branding's really clear. It's a really, I mean, they launched and they're younger than us, so I reckon they're at about the 18-month mark right now. And they got 750,000 followers on Instagram.
Actually,
It's
more.
More. Okay.
Just check it.
How many now?
More than 2,000.
Wow. Okay.
200,000.
Yeah.
218,000, yeah.
There you go. Right.
Really well.
And all they're doing is just something that's really simple, obvious, and in your face every day that makes people grab onto it and go, yeah, that's right. And we see people sharing it more and more all the time. I think the thing they do very well, which is something for yourselves to consider too, is that they're an information source, right? So they're not really creating anything original, and so they always make sure they give credit where it's due. They're really there to highlight the other people that are doing awesome stuff. And so within the process of developing your own Tohono Society projects, make sure that you're always giving credit where it's due along the way, right? That element of community extends so far as to making sure you have respect for whoever's had the ideas along the way. I think it's just...
Yeah, it just comes back to being honest. I think that through Instagram and some of those social media channels, it's quite easy to become a keyboard warrior without, actually living about what you're talking about. But the more that you do that, and the more you have this humble way of being like, oh, I fucked up and I used something plastic today, or, shit happens, you don't always forget, you don't always remember to bring your coffee mug with you, or whatever it is. Just being honest about it, it helps massively.
And
These aren't actually too bad.
these ones actually came out pretty good. I'm still, really impressed with that. But so your activation for Toner Society, so much of it is going to be based on how pretty it looks. And this can be a really weird thing, right? As bartenders, we're really good at making sure the garnishes, making sure the drinks look great, but we usually dress like bums, and we're maybe not always as artistic as we would hope we would be, and that kind of thing. So understand, in the lead up to the competition, in the lead up to your presentation, spend time on making sure it looks fucking legit. Because our website did not at first. Our website looked like garbage.
It was really bad.
It was really, really bad.
Really glad that we cleaned it up and making it easier for things to click on and making them searchable, and all of those little things that you don't really think about until you've tried to go back on it and used it as a resource yourself. It's like, this could be a little bit easier. But that was the thing. We had to pull together photography. You have to make sure that if you are making drinks, if that's part of your shtick, that they do look excellent when they're on a screen, because that's the media that we're all using to get our word out there right now.
Yeah, if you're building a website, take the time to go through the websites that you like visually, right? Understand which ones, from a design perspective, you really enjoy constantly looking through, and have 5 or 6 of them on a mood board, and be like, I love the font that they use in this one. I like the way that when you click through, I like the way the website builds on this one. Understand what it is that you want from whatever you're building. If you're building a pitch deck like this, same thing. Try and gather 3 or 4 examples so that when you turn around and it comes competition time, you've presented something that is a really great culmination of everything you enjoy and whatever else is around you. Does that make sense? Make sure you have those mood boards. Make sure you're building all that stuff, because the people that don't, they will shine through. Well, the people that do, rather, they'll shine through immediately, because they'll have that eye-grabbing attention to detail.
I think the first thing you do is like creating a mood board, or creating a pitch deck for any idea that you have before you're doing your presentation, or you guys need a second to
Push in, guys. Come on. Let's get real cozy in here.
Welcome to Lithuania.
Sorry, we bought this from London with us. There's nothing you can do with it.
No, actually, it's welcome to Lithuania summer.
everybody kind of settled and dry.
Nope. So what you're saying is Lithuanian summers are like London summers?
Yeah, basically it's like you never know.
I mean, those kids look like they're having fun.
Alright, so creating that pitch deck and finding the way that you're going to talk about it, the language you're going to use, how you're, that elevator pitch, that 10-minute bit where you talk about exactly what it is, and then you figure out what it looks like visually, and then by the end of creating that pitch deck, you really have a broader understanding of what your idea is meant to be in the first place.
That's, I think it was you can get that. That's a really important thing, guys. So, you're going to start creating your own community-based project, okay? And everyone's going to turn around to you. And everyone's going to turn around to you, and they're going to be like, so what is it? Everyone's going to turn around to you, and they're going to be like, so what is your project? And you're going to have what's referred to as... I mean, he's in a wetsuit, so he doesn't care anyway. Alright. Yeah, so people are going to turn around and they're going to say, what is your project? And you need to have what's referred to as an elevator pitch nailed down. Which is, if you get on, in business terms, it's referred to as, if you get in an elevator on the ground floor, you've got 10 floors to to convince everybody why it's the best thing in the world, okay? So, for Trash Tiki, we would say our three things are, it's anti-waste drinks that taste okay and don't fuck the planet, right? Or we refer to it as the bartender's resource for all things anti-waste. And so immediately you know it's aimed at bartenders. The anti-waste thing tells you it has a sustainability factor involved in that. And the resource element makes everybody understand that it's information-based. Have your elevator pitch. Have your ability to be able to spit it out nice and quickly with whatever you need to do.
Right, so this is kind of our ideas as to why Trash Tiki ended up working. And it was because that we've taken ourselves away from having a cocktail bar. So you know those recipes weren't going to be anywhere else. You don't have to worry about them being in another bar or having that element of competition. We wanted to take that straight out of the equation. All of the recipes, they kind of make you feel good. You know, you're using things that are already available in the bar. You don't have to spend, thousands of dollars on a fucking rotavac or a centipede or any of that fancy equipment. You can execute it all with stuff that everyone had. It was accessible. And there was no judgment from us. It was just how can we spread knowledge and advice and make this accessible for everyone that was involved. Oh.
Yeah. You could go.
Okay. And as much as we like to say that we've outgrown our teenage punk phases, for Ian and I, we just haven't. So we were able to play the music that we wanted and made it fun for everyone else. And make this idea of sustainability, which a lot of companies at the time were using as a way to sort of greenwash everything and say, it was a marketing department that came up with the way of talking about sustainability for a certain brand without that brand actually fucking doing anything that was really green or sustainable. So we wanted to breathe some life and some fun back into that word.
And
it worked.
And it worked. Yeah, it did. It feels weird after only 2 years to be like it did work. But we feel like we've had the right kind of impact with it all. And with that, we took a very unique approach. That punk side of things was something that I think most people are still surprised with how much we swear and everything. Like, you can still be professional and be yourself at the same time. And it is finding that uniqueness. It's, again, finding you're going to have a community-based project that still needs to tie back into Altos in some capacity. So make sure you've done all your research about Altos, all the amazing sustainable initiatives that they have in there. Find which ones are unique as well, because it's kind of, there's nothing worse than a cocktail competition when everyone stands up and tells the exact same story about the brand, right? Again, you're going to need to make sure that when you stand up and launch your community project, you tie that all in a manner that is unique and honest to who you are. Oh, look at that.
And sometimes it's not listening to your parents or telling you to not swear online as much anymore. So we went through this tour, and it's not to say that everything was as great or perfect that it seemed like, maybe from following us on Instagram or seeing some of our pop-ups, because some of them were epic failures. This one, we are 3 deep at the bar. So we had done a pop-up at Broken Shaker in Chicago, which is a really cute, lovely little cocktail bar in the back of a hotel. The front of the hotel holds another 150 people. And we decided it was a great idea because we didn't want to print menus or have any of that paper waste to display the menu in the lobby on a projector screen, which then made all the 100 people in the lobby want a cocktail from the tiny little cocktail bar that was operating out of the back, which essentially bottlenecked the entire night. We had a God bless her, poor bartender that walked off the shift in the middle of the night, never to return to the bar.
She just quit. She was like, fuck this, I'm out of here. And just walked out on the shift like, ooh, that's definitely not what we're trying to do when we do pop-ups in other people's bars. But we did 500 cocktails in 6 hours on a Sunday afternoon. Just 2 of us, and it was an absolute shit show. Little things like
it was messy. The drinks were meant to be good.
I think the drinks still came out, but they didn't look good because we didn't have time to garnish shit. It was mostly just cocktail by the end of it all. It was one of these ones where we just didn't have planning in place yet, and that's a big thing that we learn along the way. Is we refer to ourselves as punks with a plan, if you will. We do the spreadsheets. We write the documents. Like when we reach out to a venue for a pop-up, they get like a 9-slide deck about who we are, what we want to do, the financial way we want to do things. We then have a spreadsheet in the lead up to it all that has a profit and loss projections on there. So we're like, okay, if your venue holds 100 people and we're going to charge $9 per drink, what happens if nobody turns up? What happens if a few people turn up? What happens if loads of people? So that there's talk about that. We always make sure we talk about the money side of it, and then we have recipe sheets, everything as well. So that when we go in and do a pop up there, we don't fuck their stock take the next month. And they're like, those fucking trash tiki assholes, rah rah rah. It's like, no, here's all the recipes, here's everything. Like trying to have that continuity and that consistency in our communications.
We also have a little one page that outlines everything that could and would happen during the lead up, duration, and post pop-up follow-up with everyone, so that everyone is on board. We get them to send it to all the staff that are involved that day, just so that any possible scenario is kind of covered in that sheet.
And you're going to need to consider these same things as well. If you're going to do a community activation, how are you then going to reach out to the community? What are you going to communicate to them? How are you going to draw people in? If you're going to host it in somebody's bar, you need to have a one page for that event so that that bar knows what's going to happen. When are they going to turn up? All this kind of stuff is kind of like, I don't know, it's weird because it's none of the shit that we got into this industry to deal with, right? We got into this industry to make drinks and stay up late and have fun and party and everything like that. But these community initiatives, these activations that transcend just bartending and really make it about something much greater, they require yourselves to dig a little deeper. They require yourselves to push yourself, and because otherwise you'll wind up doing events like this one, which are just absolutely
And you have to, we've also learned that you have to have a respect for how that bar is run already. You can kind of go in with these expectations. You've done these pop-ups and everything from a dive bar to a place like Dandelion, which is very well set up. And you can't go in saying that you're going to do it better. You kind of have to have an understanding and appreciation for how they run their bars as well, so that you're not coming in being like, I'm going to do it this way. They know how the bars run, and that's generally like the best attitude to have.
Yeah. Still, my favorite moment within all of this was when we got shat on, which was in about half an hour of the event starting. Was because they basically, what they hadn't told us was, as well as putting the projector on the wall, so the 100 people in the lobby were going to come in, they were also going to do floor service for those 100 people, which was also not something we remembered to communicate. And so it's a 2-station bar, and I'm down one end plugging away on a few drinks, and I was like, it's getting kind of fucking weird. Hey, everyone's down this end, but you're... And I look down, and there's that many checks that have come out the printer that just for you to keep them off getting wet, you actually wrap them around your head as a scarf, and we're pulling the checks off as a scarf as you went. And it was like, okay, we're really fucked here. This is going to be fun. Yeah. These drinks were actually really tasty.
They were tasty, but they aren't the prettiest things.
No, they're not. It kind of to the frustration of the industry. It was a really weird thing that we're like, Trash Tiki is just one large ongoing experiment where we're exploring these recipes. We write about them really honestly. And sometimes things aren't great. And that's just kind of the reality of when you're doing something that's never really been done before, is you have to have trial and error. You have to have experimentation. But some people got really mad about that. They were like, no, they must be perfect before you talk about them whatsoever. Like, have you read books that like Thomas Jerry wrote? Those recipes fucking suck. Yeah, they're all horrible. And so it's then about like you taking that inspiration and adapting it into what it could become.
And learn from the bad ones. Figure out why those recipes haven't worked. Make a new recipe and move on and let it evolve. It's okay. It happens.
At this stage in the tour, we were already in Chicago. This is at Lost Lake. So at this point, we'd already done plus 30 pop-ups, I reckon, give or take. We're in the 20 to 30 mark with it all. We're in the middle of a 10-city, 7-week USA tour. Lost Lake is a eye-wateringly phenomenal bar that had suffered a fire accident in the front of their building, and they were actually relaunching the front bar with us and everything like that. And this one took a lot of effort to pull together. There's little things like, you look at all these coasters and that kind of thing, but we actually had 3 people sitting there doing a 2-hour arts and crafts session just to pull together the coasters for it all. Again, kind of understanding the time commitments that all of this comes together. In case you haven't picked up on it by now, you won't be able to do it all on your own. You're gonna need friends. you're gonna need family. You're gonna need a support network to pull your event together. Because if you try and hammer out every single detail, I mean, that's almost the antithesis of what a community project is anyway, right? You need that community to help pull it all together. But know when to ask for help. Know when to just be like, we're fucked right now, and we need to move on, kind of thing. Yeah.
So the financial model worked when we didn't have to pay rent. But to be realistic, paying for flights in and out of a market and accommodation and all of those things when you're doing it on your own, granted we do it as a profit share. When you're doing pop-up over 3-4 days, you think that the sales are going to be the same. They're not. Bartenders would come on all together on the first day, and then it would just gradually, or they think, you have 4 days to come down to them, they just don't. It just, some of them didn't work, some of them were slow as fuck, and some of them we lost money on. So you're gonna have to be kind of prepared as to where the money for what you're doing is coming from, where it's going, and have that financial model in place that you have an idea of what you could possibly lose and how to make it better before you even start.
Yeah, that financial planning is huge. That was something we didn't really consider at first. We were like totally just making it up as we were going along. And for yourselves, yeah, I mean, the prize at the end of this is a pretty little pot of money from the Altos Foundation. So being able to show up front where that money's going to go, what it's going to go towards, having a safety net in place as well. I think that's really important, is like to look at a financial model and see a line in there that's like, what will happen when everything goes wrong? How much is that going to cost, kind of thing? Be really, really realistic with your financials and have them down on paper from the beginning. Know what they all are, because yeah, that was something that we failed at really badly at first, and there were many, many cities where we were very, very, very broke.
Yeah.
But we learn as we go along, right? All right, some stupid shit that we've seen along the way.
Yeah. That was kind of like all of our own stupid shit. We're going to talk about some things that we've seen other people do that we didn't agree with.
Yeah, so one guy that we won't name, because that's not in the community spirit of things, decided to run his own sustainability pop-up, which was great. He was doing it in Edinburgh for Tales on Tour a couple of years ago, and we got chatting with the staff from that venue. And as an example for one of his drinks, he wanted to do a drink that was made of bread ends and flat champagne that might be left over. Except he got the staff to actually go and buy fresh new bread and pull all the middle out of it, and then just open bottles of champagne in the 3 days before his event so that it was flat by the time he got there. That is not how you do this shit, okay? Like you're creating waste to that is literally the opposite of everything we're pushing towards with it all. But these are the kind of ideas that go through people's heads, right? They think that they just need to put these words on their menu and say bread and syrup so that they look cool, and then that's the fucking opposite of it, right? Like you've got to do a bit more work than that, because in that same city, they're guaranteed there was a bakery somewhere that was throwing out bread at the end of the day.
Definitely.
Right? I mean, and the figure sits at something like 60% of all bread baked in the UK actually gets thrown out, right? Real fucked up.
Very easy to circumvent. The other thing is, if you're wanting to start a conversation about something online, it's still a great way to get your ideas out and to get how you feel about something out, and to start like a bit of a conversation about it. But be willing to take the good with the bad. You're going to have some people that reach out that are willing to start a conversation about citrus and about there might be a preservative or a toxin that gets released from citrus rinds through boiling them, which we had backed up by a scientist, and also just some conversations that we had also through multiple testing the drinks, everything that we make. And we offered this information back up online to this person that was saying that it might be harmful, and he just wasn't willing to accept and talk about the information. I'm not sure how he wanted us to respond, but it was something where we really learned from that. It's people have valid opinions, and by responding to those valid opinions, you need to be willing to change and adapt the conversation to how that's going to go, and sometimes it will get out of your control. So just have that in the forefront of your mind when you're starting a Facebook conversation.
Yeah, in case you aren't aware, the internet is full of morons, is basically. Yeah.
That's basically what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Yeah.
I think a huge one up there is, for the love of God, I reckon we're actually past our saturation point of straw initiatives. Okay? I think we've all talked about this topic enough. We know that they're really fucking bad for the environment, but they are the jumping off point of 1,000,001 other issues that are facing our environment and facing our industry every single day. So just to dispel that one straight off the bat, there is so many straw initiatives out there. Every major corporate company decided to create their own one and all the rest of it. So consider, if that is the case, maybe there's an idea where you could take that idea further, but your initiative should not be based in removing straws from cocktail bars, because that one is done. Okay? Just so we're extra clear on that.
Or the sense of owning sustainability, and that'll be our sort of final one. It's not necessarily that this idea that you have for the Altos competition has to be about sustainability. That's not what we're saying. It could be anything that you feel inspired by, and sustainability might be part of that, but it might be, you know, this new amazing idea that y'all might have.
Yeah, and you can't own that. What are the actual categorizations again? I'm forgetting right now. Tohuna Society's released like 4 categorizations. Five. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Bartender wellness.
Yep. Putting you on the spot here, I know.
Flora and fauna.
We'll pull them up in a second anyway, and we'll
Yeah.
make sure we
Recycling,
chat
upper
through them all.
recycling.
Huh? So, stay balanced while you're on the road. This was a really weird one for us that we hadn't considered, but we spent last year an average of 3.5 days in a city before we got on a flight and flew somewhere else, which sounded like a shitload of fun. And we got to work for ourselves, and we got to go to all these places we'd always want to go to. Literally, sometimes we just looked at the map and we're like, oh, we've never been to that city. I wonder if we know someone there where we can throw a pop-up. It was all really amazing, but we definitely lost our balance along the way. When you go from your structured hours being as a bartender and somebody else taking care of you, it kind of, you suddenly are responsible for everything. How much sleep you get.
How you're going to get breakfast every morning when you don't speak the language in a certain country. That was a challenge. It's just these things that you don't really think about, that you don't have time to like go to the gym. You like maybe have time to squeeze in a 20-minute run if you're not too jet lagged or hungover or tired or whatever. It's really difficult to maintain balance on the road, but I think the big thing that we learned while we were traveling was that some nights you just have to be like, I'm gonna take this one for myself and stay home, or just go to a couple of bars before going to bed instead of, you know, trying to pack in everything. Sometimes you just have to say,
Yeah.
I need this time.
And so as you start your own initiatives, that's going to be really important for yourselves as well, is to be aware that, like, it can't affect your job, right? It has to be, this is going to be an extra workload on top of what you already put in at your job. And so you're going to need to consider, how do you keep that balance? If this winds up becoming something that takes another 10, 15 hours of your week, what are you going to sacrifice? How are you going to draw that all out along the way with it all? Because we've definitely seen cocktail competitions as well in the past where they've actually been to the detriment of the bartender's actual real job. And that is not the point with these kind of things. So plan ahead. Have tedious spreadsheets that have your hours per week in them and stuff like that. Have all that stuff on paper, because it allows you to kind of keep that balance and push forward a little bit more.
There would be nothing worse than for us when we were talking about how we were going to maintain our balance when we were at a real low. It'd be really awful for us to land in a new city, tired, hungover, and not have the energy for a presentation, or not have the energy to like go and meet the bartenders in whatever city that it was. It would look not only really bad on us, but we would leave the city feeling horrible about our own personal initiative, and that's not what we're meant to be spreading. We're meant to be spreading positive energy and excitement and all of these things that you need to have energy for.
Jumping right to the bottom of that there as well, understand where you're going to need to collaborate. Because bringing it around to that point before, you're not going to be able to do everything. You're going to need to reach out to the Tohuna team and maybe get some advice from them. You're going to need to reach out to, I don't know, cousin, brothers, sisters, uncle, twice removed, whoever that's a graphic designer to help you get that label done for cheap. You're going to need to consider where it's just simply beyond your own means and call for that help. Because again, yeah, just don't try and do that all yourself. That is not going to be the freshest way to keep things moving forward. With it all. You happy with that one?
Yep.
All right. Let's get into our branding.
Right, so this year, we kind of, after the tour, we kind of decided that, you know, maybe not everyone wants to walk into a bar at 4 o'clock in the afternoon listening to really loud punk music and drink tiki drinks. That's maybe not, we understand that as bartenders, but sometimes, you know, the consumer doesn't want to do that. So we needed to learn how to diversify so that we could get our message across not just to bartenders, but to the end drinker and the partier and sort of all of these people that we weren't reaching with Trash Tiki's concept. And that was cleaning things up a little bit. So Trash Tiki is now going to become an online resource only. We've kind of reached a few markets that, you know, that we felt were important, including this one. So it's after this, it's becoming online. Then we went on and created this Wasteland Paradise, which is usually thrown after cocktail festivals or conferences, and it's just like a let loose party. It's not branded with any one brand, so anyone feels like they can come down. There was a major brand party that finished up in Berlin and had all of their people, all of their brand ambassadors into our party by midnight, which was really awesome. But it's really fun, and like the visuals and the way that we talk about it is very like disco and fun and lighthearted and diverse and all about bringing together us as a community, no matter what your background. And then Common Sense was, I'm gonna fix that typo there. Common Sense is a way of talking about the home drinker, the home bartender, and the visuals for that are really, really clean and design oriented. The cocktail is a lot more visually stimulating and really look at locality of ingredients and what's easy to get and for any period of time in the year. And so we had to diversify.
And so you can hear as Kelsey kind of chat through all that each of these brands have their own identity. And when you start to create your project, that same thing, what's your identity? What does it sound like? Like, is it Trash Tiki where you swear a lot and there's like this borderline undertone of aggression in there and really wanting to get it in everyone's faces as loud and really whether they want to hear about it or not? Or is it Wasteland Paradise? Is it something that's like lighthearted, it's for the community, it's queer-centric, it's disco, we communicate, I mean, the posters are literally just a whole bunch of different emojis copy and pasted on repeat, right? And it's all sparkly and fun. Or is it something like Common Sense? It's very design-led, very clean, very beautiful, something that you almost want to see on a coffee table in somebody's home or something like that. So you can see how we kind of had to really step back and go, well, we can't just have one identity. But for yourselves, with this project, you really do want that. You want to have that one thing that is visually immediately understood, that has a tone of voice about it, that everybody, there's a continuity in the tone of voice. So if you've got to stand up and do a 1-hour presentation on whatever your project may be, make sure it starts and finishes at that exact same point with it all. Yeah, really start to consider how your own identity will then feed into that project. And how does that all come together as one and really be realized in a manner that makes everyone go, wow, that was a cohesive, really great presentation, right? Because something we really pride ourselves on is knowing that, like, particularly when we look, because Trash Tiki is the brand that we've had the longest now, you can look at our logo and we're pretty sure, like, most people always feel pretty confident when they see it. If you took the words away, they'd still be like, oh, that's Trash Tiki. That's the ultimate test of your branding, right? If you were to remove the branding and all the other visuals still made people think of your brand. Okay.
So these 3 pieces are from 3 different artists that we've given kind of the same go from words to, and given examples to, and they just kind of did their own version of Trash Tiki for us. And like Ian said, they've all got a continuous thread throughout them.
Yeah. So consider what it's kind of like. I guess Nike tick. any of these major brands, if you start thinking about them in that regard, if you took the words off there, you'd still know immediately what it is, kind of thing. And so, yeah.
Yeah, gather imagery that you think is great. Find artists that you think are amazing. Some of them you will be able to afford, but some of them you won't. And then send all of that information to the artist that you think is right for your brand.
Yeah. I think really important is understanding as well that when I look across these, I love Demi that created this one for us out of Florida. She lives now, but it's the one that is most like a poster and least like a logo, right? When you look at it, you're like, okay, that's kind of busy, and so that would work for an event poster, but that wouldn't be good as a logo. So really understand that as well. Do you need some super tight lockup? What are you gonna create any POS with your branding on there as well, right? Are you going to create t-shirts or snapbacks or bum bags or what might be an intended purpose for this logo? Because that's going to affect a lot of shit as well, because that would never be a great t-shirt. Whereas Cindy's one that he made for us, the best fucking t-shirts we've ever made in our lives, right? Because that thing is like this big and gnarly on the back of a t-shirt. Everybody sees it immediately and goes, I want one of those. So when you start getting into this branding phase of everything, really think about that full timeline. What's the intended purpose? Because again, this is not shit we usually have to think about as bartenders. So really dive deep into that whole timeline of your project.
This is exactly what you just went through, but this is kind of how we go through each thing for our brand. And it's the message that you want to give, and you have to think about how you're going to talk about it, what media it's going to go out to. Is this going onto a website? Is it going onto Facebook? Is it going onto Instagram? They all have different sizes. Is it going on a t-shirt? You have to think about what that is going to look like visually, the style of drink. If you have a drink that goes along with your idea, which you don't necessarily have to have for this competition, is that cohesive with your branding as well? Does the drink look how it's meant to look? Because the ones for Wasteland versus Common Sense versus Trash Tiki all have a very different look and flavor. And then the final thing, and probably the first thing you got to think about is who do you want to be talking to? Is it other bartenders? Is it party goers? Is it the end consumer that's sitting at the bar that really you want to think about what they're drinking? Who are you talking to? Because that'll shape everything else.
And then no matter once you do all of that, you got to understand that all that sits above this line and everything below the line is all the other shit you can't control. It's now estimated that as a brand on social media, you need to post about the one single idea somewhere between 6 and 8 times just to get the majority of your followers to have followed it, right? The algorithm is working against people. Social media is just in general, it's just become like white noise that's constantly in the background of our lives. So understand that even once you curate all this, you're going to have to fight like tooth and nail and really have something unique to be able to punch through and reach the masses with it all. So like, there's a lot of shit to take on board with launching your own brand, definitely. So.
So I was part of a Tales seminar this summer. And the person that was creating the visuals for the seminar, he was writing in a version of like a Dell computer that was from 1998, and he really struggled with putting together visuals in a format that was readable or understandable in any kind of way. Unfortunately, it was too late to change it, but these are some of the examples of his slides that were just like really, really bad. If you're not good at visuals, if you're not good at like Illustrator or creating websites or any of that shit, that's okay. Just find somebody else that can help you realize where your strengths lay and where what you're good at, and then find somebody else that can help you through the rest of it, because you never want to.
I mean, that's not even graphic designer shit. He's just got the order of the images in the wrong. Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this slide before. She just put it in, so I was really curious about this as well. Yeah, for the love of God, you've got to be clear with this stuff. You see the difference between our logos and then some of this stuff that goes up there, right? Make it punchy, make it like, wow, that is so bad. All right. Because ultimately with your project and whatever you want to do, you want to capture people's attention and keep their attention. That's the end game of this, right? It's not about having something that 30 seconds after they see it, they forget about it. It's having something that they become fucking obsessed with and tune in every single day and check back every single day, and you start to get so many native visits to your website that you know people are coming back day after day after day to reread and get more inspiration and get more of whatever the hell it is you're offering. You want to have that. You want to wind up with the Pikachu on acid effect, right? You just want to have your followers constantly engaged, whether they have to come to your bar or online or whatever it might be. Just
and give them something fresh every time. You know, if you've got somebody checking back every week, in the beginning we were posting fresh content every day. There's a account called Ashton Berry, and she talks a lot about women's rights and diversity in the bar, and she does a weekly reading where she posts somebody else's articles, but the articles are always really interesting and kind of drive her conversation forward. So she has that weekly or daily content that is just other people's writing that she's reposted. But she's really good at keeping fresh content constantly.
Yeah, I think what Ashton's done incredibly well is she's utilized Instagram stories. So Ashton, we were chatting with, she was in Toronto the other week. She's sitting at about 2,500 to 3,000 followers on Instagram right now, but she'll get upwards of like 500 interactions on every, like, and when we say interactions, this is not views, this is people writing to her about a day's worth of stories. She'll just use it on repeat and drives all her interactions through that. And then her pictures still get great likes as well, but she's just really captured on that format of the social media platform, and she drives the crap out of it, and it works fantastically for her because she has something really important that the industry wants to hear about. And she talks about it in a great fashion. Ashton would be another one that we'd suggest everyone goes and follows immediately. Yeah. Right. Got to remember to move off that slide so he never pulls epilepsy.
So just winding everything back around to what we really wanted to give away to you guys through our learnings through the past year, and that is to get all of your ideas down on paper. The more that you're thinking about how you're going to talk about it, the visuals and having everything together, sit down for like 2 hours and go through how you want to talk about it. Have your elevator pitch, have your Google presentation, and maybe even make like just a one-page what you want to talk about and all of the different points and things that are going to feed into that, whether it's visuals, whether it's talking points, whether it's other people that you want to collaborate with. Be able to talk about it first for yourself, and that way you'll be able to talk about it with anyone else.
Yeah, have the full timeline of that project in place as well. Understand that like your first few stages in the competition, don't be just planning one ahead. You like this, the ultimate success of the Tahuna competition is going to be based in somebody that's already thinking about things as if they've won, right? Have that full timeline of being like, okay, for the first stage, I'm pretty sure you only have to write like a 10-minute pitch or something like that, right? Have that written out, but also have what it looks like when you win all that money. How do you then go on and activate your project and all the rest of it? Like, really plan ahead as far as possible with it all, because you'll start realizing where there might be faults or mistakes or issues, because you'll suddenly be like, oh, well, this works when I do it as a 10-minute presentation, but when I have to do it every day for the next year of my life, I might actually go insane. And so, you know, really understand what it's going to look like all the way through it all. I mean, you guys know where the money is coming from, so you have that advantage. That's one really good thing.
But having an idea where if you know where the money is coming from, also where you're going to use it, right? And how you're going to. It would be the worst thing to not quite get the message out, but have run through all the money that Tahuna has given you. Have an idea and a plan of where more is going to come from and how you're going to keep this going once you've won and have started and launched your platform.
Yeah. And most importantly, the final one, get out and fucking do it. Don't be those bartenders that stay awake till 3 a.m. Well, actually, it's a 3 a.m. last call in this city. Don't be those bartenders that stay awake till 5, 6 a.m. every night doing shots and talking about what you're going to enter. Go to bed that little bit earlier. Get up earlier the next morning. Write the fucking business plan. Write the pitch. Enter the competition, okay? This is very much a competition that is based, I mean, it's for the community. And so you're going to have to be an active participant in that to win. So, like, really understand that commitment that comes with all those different aspects of it. Yeah.
That's it, guys.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
Final
Yeah,
word.
thank
Yeah.
you so much.